Do-Right Wisdom here, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Earth Day Y2K 20.06.01 with June is busting out all over. Alright, not in the mood. And it's just the 155 days until the election. And remember, fake Senate impeachment trial, remember that? Remember, there was no vindication, no adjudication, and no exoneration for this creep, traitor, turd Trump. Repeat. Remember that Trump uses projection. Freud would have a field day with him. Projection is when you attribute your own feelings, beliefs, behaviors, and you put them onto others. You attribute them to others. If Trump calls Antifa a terrorist organization, Trump is the terrorist. If he says Nancy Pelosi is crazy, he is really the crazy person. When Trump calls protesters thugs, he is the thug. When Trump calls anyone a liar or an incompetent or a weakling, he is really talking about himself. Never ever forget this important axiom. 2. Good book to buy? If you have an e-reader device, Viruses, a short introduction. And they have a whole series of these science books you can get to give you a short introduction to all these studies. And the virus one is quite interesting. The music in the background is from The Shawshank Redemption by Thomas Newman. I knew it was going to get ugly when Trump was elected. I've said this so many times over the 3.5-year run of this program. How ugly? I did not yet know. I speculated on possible nuclear war, but never anticipated a pandemic. Nuclear war may be yet with us because there are still 8 more months of the terrorist president's term. So right behind the CV-19 tragedy comes the murder of another unarmed black man, George Floyd, at the hands of white police officers. This time in the great state of Minnesota and the city of Minneapolis, followed now by days and days of nationwide peaceful protest accompanied by outside agitator-engendered violence and looting. And adding insult to our injury, we are afflicted with a sociopathic president who pours gas on the flames instead of dousing them. In one tweet, Nazi Trump warned, "When the looting starts, the shooting starts." A quote he took, but denies, from the racist police chief of Miami way back in the 60s. In another tweet, he claimed that vicious dogs will be let loose on demonstrators near the White House if they did not disperse. Still another tweet, the creep-in-chief attacks Democratic governors as weak and urges them to get rough with protesters. You know, punch them in the face, like he said at his rallies. And still another tweet from the twit bastard comes the proclamation that Antifa is a terrorist organization and will be labeled as such in law because, according to Trump and his enablers, the rioters and looters are all from that left-wing group. I personally believe that the legitimate protests are being invaded by outside thugs hired by Trump and his Proud Boys. More of that the next time. It's a conspiracy theory. Our country is burning, not only from a pandemic, but also from a sociopathic president who has consistently encouraged and enabled fellow travelers. What used to lurk in the darkness of alleyways, or what used to spew forth insane hatred from the back of auditoriums, has now, thanks to the sociopath in charge, been normalized and armed to the teeth. As armed as those assholes were who stormed the Michigan State House to protest being locked down due to the virus. What did these creeps intend to do with these weapons that they brandished? And why were they allowed to do that in the first place? And when I think about images of the brutal murder of Mr. Floyd, I understand too that vicious racist violence has been going on in the USA for 400 years. As great as our country is, its dark side undermines it. While many in our nation have broken the chains of racist bigotry, there are still too many that have not. We now live in an age when the President of the United States is a supporter of that racist bigotry. He is the one that sounded the clarion call when he called the Nazis on the other side in Charlottesville nice people. And he is the one who in July of Y2K17 stood in front of police officers on Long Island and told them it would be okay to rough up suspects by slamming their heads into the police car before putting them in the back seat. Just slam their head in. Don't duck. No, don't duck. Just slam it in there. They were smiling, some of these. Not all the cops there, but some were smiling. I've learned as a teacher that you must model good behavior because students will gladly model your bad behavior. Since most of our species are savage naked apes, even adults have to be given role models or else they too will misbehave. Whether Trump wanted it or not, along with being commander-in-chief, a president of the United States must also be the role model-in-chief. By his very behavior these 3+ years, he has taught that it is okay to be a bully, okay to be a racist, okay to abuse reporters, okay to abuse the planet, okay to abuse immigrants and especially abuse their children, okay to abuse LGBTQ people, and okay to be a rapist, misogynist maggot. He sets the whole tone for this country, ladies and gentlemen. And if he loves chaos, like I know he does, look around us now. Most importantly of all, on that July day in Y2K17, standing in front of those Long Island cops, many of them grinning, like I said before, the President of the United States gave them permission to do violence to the citizens of this nation, especially if they are of color. We are a nation at a crossroads that will decide whether our fragile democratic republic holds. We've defined deviancy down to a point that the most outrageous notion is that Trump is allowed to roam free and run for presidential re-election in the first place. Through his words and through his deeds, he has proven time and again that his is the worst terror now raining down its poison on our nation. His destructive actions and words have opened up a Pandora's box. We now can see in graphic fashion all over our lives and all over our broadcast airwaves. Everybody's got a camera these days. Many states are calling for curfews to combat the violence. For the first time that I ever heard of, New York City is declaring a curfew beginning at 11 p.m. tonight and ending at 5 a.m. As of the end of this month, I've been living in New York City for 46 years. And again, I never heard of a curfew. But I could be wrong because I went through a couple of power blackouts. And again, I don't remember having them doing curfews. And who is causing all the violence in these demonstrations? We already know the terrorist Trump contribution. And we also know that protests must continue every single day that the sociopath remains in office. But how do we separate the protesters from the maggots trying to undermine them? Fortunately, the media has already distinguished 3 groups. The first being those who are peacefully protesting, those who are intent on doing violence, and those who are simply there to revel in looting. As I've said, I believe that the violence and looting are coming from individuals connected to Trump. I understand that this is a conspiracy theory, but living as I've been and witnessing the disruption being caused by the actions and words of this president, Trump is making of our country a mirror image of himself, filled with fear, hate, and chaos to burn us all. To be continued at this theater for part 2.
I just had to tell you, keep my word about the flying eyes. And let me just tell you that I must have been 11 or 12 years old when I purchased this book, paperback book by Monarch Books. I guess Monarch Books specialized in a line of junky stuff, and I paid 35 cents for it. It's got the whole price on it and everything. I can't believe that this calendar actually included this paperback cover. And of course, you know, considering that I'm almost blind out of my left eye, I'm a little jealous seeing all these flying eyes around. Imagine plucking that big one in front and putting it in where my left eye is. I look kind of funny. But the fact of the matter is, this is an example of a picture, an advertisement, like a movie poster, that's supposed to represent what's inside, and it absolutely doesn't happen. None of this that you see on this cover happens inside the book. The book, I don't remember all the details. I know it wasn't as it was depicted on the cover of this book. J. Hunter Holly, I suppose, wrote it, or whatever. But this depiction here of the flying eyes coming after these people, I read through the whole thing, and it was stupid. And I guess I was a little kid, didn't realize it. But the same year, around this time this came out, Gorgo came out, and Monarch also put Gorgo out in a paperback, and it wasn't the same Gorgo from the movie Gorgo, but they did that too. I got sucked right into it. The Flying Eyes, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll be seeing you all next time.